To listen to this episode with perspective, I want you to first think about all the women you know in your life and imagine what their days must be in the office. Your friend, your partner, your neighbor across the hallway, your sister, your mother, and yes, your colleagues in your office. Today, I want to dive into all about women in the workplace and start with the daring question. What can you do if changing society's norm overnight feels so huge? You start by listening and being curious to understand where they are and how they feel. Hi, this is Monica Kang, and you're listening to Dear Workplace.
Asking the opinion of young female leaders in the company, what they want to see to attract more female leaders in the company, that's been very cool to be a part of.
The person who harassed me, I've been doing it for a decade or more, so the real thing for me was I should never have even known this person.
We really have to make sure that women understand. I think this is also true for people of color and LGBTQ and everything else, that they can do anything they want to do. Societal expectations, unfortunately, will be here for a while. And while we continue to work on changing what some stereotypes and assumptions are, the reality is that if you don't believe you can do something, it'll never happen. You have to believe, you have to be able to vision it.
The power of example is huge. Going to a conference and seeing a woman in security engineering, and you think to yourself, oh, that could be me. It's really that moment of, that could be me. And that's why things like having the first woman vice president, and not just woman, but she has other intersections, right? Why that is so powerful.
Parents are human and they're fallible and they're learning. You're not born with a manual on how to be a great parent.
That's a great question, Monica. Because every day I think I'm going to give this up. I'm going to give up one of these things. I can't even say, that it doesn't occur to me to give up law or give up creative writing or teaching, because I fight that battle every day. We wrestle with these things, and it's healthy, I think, to do that. And sometimes we do have to put things down.
Hi. Welcome to Dear Workplace by InnovatorsBox, where I study trends, changes, and challenges with people at work. I'm your host, Monica Kang. Today, I want to dive into all the questions about women in the workplace and why you, yes, you ladies and gentlemen, should care if we want to reimagine a future workplace for all. First, like all topics at Dear Workplace, this is one of the elephant in the room topics. In short, we've seen progress. More than half of the workforce is women, and we've also seen not enough progress. Women are still underpaid, delayed in promotion, and underappreciated at work constantly. And what makes it more nuanced is some of these are a result of good intention and leaders who were trying to do the right thing. This is not about pointing fingers, though there are some clear instances where we'll make a stance. This is about how we can be more mindful, respectful, and thoughtful of the macro long-term impact we create in every interaction we have with a colleague to how we set company policies. So as I share stories from some of my friends, I want to shine a light on what you can do either in your daily routine or in how you lead your company. My goal, as with any episode we do here, is to encourage more awareness, curiosity, and empathy, and to remind you that there is no one single solution. And in fact, assuming that there is only one way to address it or that one policy would help empower all females in your office is the very danger to not truly empathizing with how you can foster a workplace that works for all, including women. So where to start? How about representation? Why, quote, not seeing someone who looks like me in the workplace, quote, is a statement you hear a lot. Many, of my friends brought this up, but I was deeply inspired by what Alana Karen chose to write a book about women in tech as a result of this problem.
The world was sort of making it sound like women were leaving tech in droves, that it was a bad place, like they couldn't survive. And there definitely were some bad stories to back that up, some well-known bad stories that were getting press. But at the same time that I was seeing that, I was seeing all these women around me who were having meaningful careers and who, in fact, are getting paid pretty well. So I was a little bit like, whose story does this benefit? Telling women that they can't belong or saying they can't make it, right? Like that doesn't benefit us. And here we are in tech with typically more flexible, high-paying jobs. This is the kind of stuff people need, women and other minoritized populations, and we should be supporting them, not feeding this beast of imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And I just wasn't seeing that out there. While there are a ton, I should say, of Facebook groups where you can find support and other types of vehicles like conferences to hear stories, that there wasn't necessarily a book out there that I was seeing really captured what I was looking for, which is look at all these different careers you can have in tech, and you could come from anywhere and you could come and have a meaningful career here. Yes, there will be challenges, and let's talk about that too. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't come, and it doesn't mean that you couldn't thrive.
Alana Karen is an award-winning tech leader, author, and speaker who is not afraid to state what is missing to lead lasting changes. The 20-year Google veteran is today the director of search platforms and has developed, scaled, and built products and teams for Google Ads, Fiber, Google Grants, and more. Having worked in technology in Silicon Valley for a while, Alana was very aware of the gaps women in tech faced, but also of the opportunities. She admits that though it's not a rosy picture, the fact that everyone was leaving was not true either, which led her to writing The Adventures of Women in Tech in fall 2020, something that you may all enjoy as well. I asked her why articles that misportray what women can do in an industry like tech bothered her.
I think it's hard if you've always seen yourself represented. So I think it would be really hard for a person who goes into a room and sees themselves, right? And by the way, there's industries where if you walked in and you were a male, you'd feel out of place. But for example, for women in tech, often if they walk into a room of engineers, they might be the only woman. And so I think it's hard to picture that. It's hard to picture that you might be the only Latina. You might only, be the only Black person. If you have been, then you'll know how much it gets in your head, how it feeds the imposter syndrome, and how it limits what you think is possible. Because you don't necessarily feel that you belong, and you're navigating these unseen things, right? The stories people tell, the places that they went to college, the music they listen to, the references they make, right? And you might have even seen this, like a US reference in a room of heavily international people can really just make you feel like you don't belong.
What Alana describes here is real for all minorities and many women who feel like a minority in the office they work. It took me some time to get used to it too. Being the only female in most rooms I walked into, whether it was at the Congress office interning or working in nuclear nonproliferation policy projects as a government contractor. You unconsciously wonder, if I want to succeed at work, do I have to show up a certain way or be someone else? Because I don't see anyone who looks like me in roles that seem senior. Or if I do, they seem to be always overworked and tired, and I don't want to do that.
The power of example is huge. Going to a conference and seeing a woman in security engineering, and you think to yourself, oh, that could be me. it's really that moment of, oh, that could be me. And that's why things like having the first woman vice president, and not just woman, but she has other intersections, right? Why that is so powerful. And so it is, I do think if you have been there, you almost intuitively get it. If you've never been there, you do have to exercise a little bit of that empathy. Put yourself in other person's shoes, or go somewhere where you are the odd person out. And then you'll start to feel, oh, that's this level of insecurity or worry, or am I doing the right thing? Am I speaking up the right way? Or you even know you aren't speaking up the right way because no one responds in the room. And you're like, well, was it what I said? Is it who I am? Right? And you spend all your time on those things and not the other things. So yeah, I thought it was really important to say, hey, like, here's all of these different women. Here's all these different backgrounds. You too could be this person. Like, look at these examples and look at how they navigated the situations that might be worrying you or holding you back.
The exercise of going into a room where you may be the only one who looks like you is a powerful activity. I remember being at a women's business conference and how the guy who sat next to me shared with a genuine curiosity. Is this how it feels when you walk into a room of all men? A bit left out? I appreciated his honesty. Yes, and that doesn't always necessarily mean that everyone feels sour. It just means that having more allies who are aware of how people may feel at work allows leadership to better understand and design a workplace where more people feel comfortable. Well, of course, in process, you want to vet out people who are absolutely being disrespectful. Coonoor Behal shares the story of her unforgettable experience at work as a woman, an event that unfortunately many might feel or go through at work.
I got a job in my field, and 3 months in, got sexually harassed. And that lifted the veil on so much of that industry and that field for me, that it was really like, oh, wow, this thing that I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. It's like, no, thank you.
No, thank you indeed. Coonoor Behal is the founder and CEO of MindTouch, a creative consultancy that helps businesses and organizations get better results with creative methods. She is a design thinking and improv guru and also the author of I Quit, the life-affirming joy of giving up. As you heard in our last Dear Workplace episode, Coonoor is someone who is not shy to say something is not right. So I asked her, how do you handle a situation like that? Sexual harassment at work where you thought you enjoyed doing your work.
Yeah, I'd be so happy to share that story. So I didn't realize how odd my approach to my experience at that moment was until kind of the Me Too movement began, right? And so I've really kind of reflected even more on what happened.
The Me Too movement is a social movement against sexual abuse and harassment where people publicized allegations of sex crimes. It started in 2006 with Tarina Brooke sharing what she went through, which led to a broader movement in 2017 where more women shared their stories of being assaulted, including high-profile cases like Harvey Weinstein's. Unfortunately, this still happens, and Coonoor experienced this before the Me Too movement.
But so my approach was, okay, so the next day after the sexual harassment occurred, I told everyone at my company. I did not keep it a secret. I told every single person about what had happened the previous evening and what had been said to me. And I realized how strange that is. But because in that moment, and I was 25, I was young, and it was my first full-time job too, and so 3 months in my first full-time job and I was in this position, right? But my strategy, if I can even call it that, my impulse was to tell everybody. And I think with hindsight, I was doing that because, yeah, he should be shamed. He should be embarrassed to show his face anywhere the rest of this time. And I was not ashamed. Yeah, I felt none of that. And so that was kind of my approach. I also know a couple of things though about my situation was that I was able to do that because I wasn't scared of losing my job. I had higher education. I knew I would be able to find a job if I needed to. If it didn't go in my favor, so there's a lot of privilege bound up in like my ability to do that, right? I could take that risk even if I didn't know it was a risk at the time. But also in hindsight, it was like I was entry level at a nonprofit. I was being paid nothing, so it was kind of like, what is the risk here? Like to be purely cynical about it, it's like, you're not paying me enough to put up with this shit, like I have the power because you don't pay me enough, and so that was a little bit of my attitude about it. But, the other side of the coin was like, what I realized was that the person who harassed me had been doing it for a decade or more, so the real like thing for me was like, I should never have even known this person or met this person. Like he should have been fired long before I even got there. Right. And once I learned that, it had been like pretty much an ongoing thing. I was like, I'm going to force my leadership to do something. So there I was, like 25 years old, needing to tell like my director and deputy director, like, hey, I'm demanding that something be done. And it was very clear that they were like reluctant to do the hard part of their job, which is fire someone. And they were hoping it would just kind of blow over, and they wouldn't have to do the hard thing. And I was like, nope, you're going to have to do something. I don't know what it is because PS, I'm 25. I don't know what the options are, but like something needs to be done. You know what the options are. And I am not going to let this blow over. So, give it a think, and so I realized how unique that is. I definitely recommend it as a strategy to anyone who has the privilege and the gall that I did. The lesson there is that if I can be so arrogant, is that an organization, a whole industry lost a talent, right? Yeah, it really soured me on what I thought I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Wow. Courage and respect indeed. I don't know. I know a lot of people who would have the courage to do what she did. And I appreciated her adding how her privilege permitted her to be more daring. The privilege to know that if I left this job, I may find something. And if that is a fear you may have never had, then that is part of your privilege. Her comment about leaving the industry is also really important to note from a macro scale. Leaving, not because they want to, but because the society, experience, and environment disrupts how we might imagine our future selves in it. This is why keeping note of how COVID is impacting women both positively and negatively in the workplace is crucial. Yes, it has permitted more accessible jobs, but as McKinsey's 2020 Women in the Workplace report, more than 1 in 4 women had to complicate what was unthinkable just a year ago, downshifting their careers or leaving it altogether. I asked Michelle Sttecase, who has been studying gender inequalities in the workplace for years at Ernst & Young, EY, to share what her thoughts are.
In our definition, in my definition personally, this is not about every woman has to become a CEO. This is about eliminating the invisible barriers that prevent women or throw up roadblocks in a woman's career that really are just nonsense, right? It's about expectation. It's not about performance or competence, quite frankly. The other aspect of it is that we really have to make sure that women understand. I think this is also true for people of color and LGBTQ and everything else, that they can do anything they want to do. Societal expectations, unfortunately, will be here for a while. And while we continue to work on changing what some stereotypes and assumptions are, the reality is that if you don't believe you can do something, it'll never happen. You have to believe, you have to be able to vision it. Now, I think there are a lot of things that need to happen in order to help all of us understand what potentially could be in our future. If you've never seen an African-American gay woman as president of a company or as an elected official, it's hard to see yourself with all of those dynamics. Absolutely agree. However, don't be afraid to dream big.
Don't be afraid to dream big. Say that one more time. Michelle's insight is spot on for 2 reasons. Firstly, that on the experience design lens. Creating an equitable workplace focuses not on the emphasis that everyone wants to be the CEO, but rather that they want to be appreciated and be able to grow without obstacles. And secondly, how important it is that we as female use our minds to envision what is possible, even if society says not yet. She shares more on what she learned having led Women Fast Forward, the EY platform for closing the gender parity gap, as one of the many programs she led while working at EY for the past 8 years. Okay, so how can one be a better ally?
I think the first step, right, whether this is men, as allies for women, white people as being allies for people of color or cisgender or anything, right? The first step really is understanding that their experience, their world is not yours.
Tell me a bit more.
That sounds really simple. It's incredibly difficult. And you have to listen to understand, right? I talk a lot about making sure that we are listening to understand, not listening to respond or reply, right? And asking the question, Monica, I don't know what it's like to be Asian American. Help me understand what drives the expectations of perfection for Asian women, right? Why? I know what it's like to be a Caucasian woman and have those expectations of perfection, whatever that might be, right? That lead us to have confidence gaps and everything else. But help me understand that difference. When we do that, when we come at these difficult conversations at times with an intention to understand, it immediately creates a bridge.
What if we make a mistake? What are the steps we can take?
Then if you don't know how to say it without maybe being slightly off, you get forgiven, right? Because I don't know that there is a single way to say something to every individual who is not like you in your network, right? There's not a single phrase, single sentence, single approach. So if you seek to understand, listen, recognize those differences, then try to act. And there's so many things you can do. So don't allow yourselves, let's talk about at home, right? You don't allow boys will be boys, girls will be girls.
Well said. All the phrases we say cement a picture that is not true. What about in the workplace?
In the workplace, challenge yourself. Am I acting this way because she has kids? Maybe I should ask if she wants to take on a new assignment with a lot of travel. She may say yes, she may say no. We have to stop assuming is a big part of it.
Yes, we have to stop assuming. Stop assuming that the reason why she hesitated speaking up is because she is a female. Stop assuming that the reason why she may have declined that project is because she is a female. Start being curious about why she may have felt eager in that team project or hurt when she was not introduced. Start being curious about what you can do policy-wise such that more leaders and allies can be aware of their unconscious biases. And start being curious about how we can cement these lessons of awareness. Listening to understand and believing what is possible as a woman in the workplace early on can affect a child's journey to their career. Teenagers are not too young. We often first think about what we want to do when we are that age, so start letting them dream. And this also goes to women leading women. All of us can make a difference in the narrative and what we experience at work to make it inclusive for all. Every step matters. So thanks for joining us today. This is Monica Kang, your host at Dear Workplace. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Next week, we'll continue to dive into different challenges at work, and this one is about something I'm hearing about a lot. Being authentic. What does that mean and what does it not mean?
Hello there. I'm Luke Helder, the head composer here at InnovatorsBox, and I hope you're enjoying Dear Workplace. I'm obsessed with art and the power it has to convey meaning and emotion, and I also really like tea. This show is brought together by our awesome team: producer Serin O, audio engineers Sam Lermott and Ravi Ladd, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer Akriti Pandey, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and me on music. And of course, Dear Workplace is hosted and directed by Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. To continue the conversation of reimagining the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We would love to hear what you enjoy most about the show, and if there is anything you would especially like to hear discussed in a future episode, let us know and I'll try to convince Monica to talk about it. See you next week.
Bring your questions and thoughts, and I'll see you next week.